There are moments, quiet, almost invisible, when you realize you've been holding your breath, not just for a second, but for a lifetime. You've been breathing to survive, not to live. In meetings, in conversations, even in sleep, your body inhales as if the world is about to collapse and exhales as if bracing for something worse. And yet, no one sees it. This silent exhaustion, this weightless ache, it doesn't scream, but it shapes everything. You wake up tired. You visualize change. You write affirmations. You listen to meditations. But your breath is still trapped in a frequency of fear, a rhythm of caution, a pulse of just get through the day. And deep inside, something knows. You're living out of sync with your own energy. There's a part of you that doesn't want more information. It wants sensation, not more books, but more embodiment. It doesn't want to think transformation. It wants to feel it. It wants to know what presence actually feels like in your chest. Not as a concept, as a reality. But how can you feel anything real when your breath is disconnected from your being? When it's shallow, scattered, squeezed by invisible tension? Most of us believe breathing is just about oxygen, just about the body, just about function. But what if breath is the bridge? What if every inhale is a message, and every exhale is a signature on your reality? Neville Goddard once said, "You breathe into the state of the wish fulfilled. Not think, not visualize. Breathe." To breathe is to assume, not intellectually, but atmospherically. What would it mean to inhale the emotion of your dream, already realized? To exhale as if nothing were missing, not to perform, not to pretend, but to embody. Joe Dispenza shows us how breath connects the heart and brain, changing electromagnetic patterns, aligning the field, rewriting the signals we send into space. This isn't metaphor. This is mechanism. This is how consciousness becomes coherence. So let me ask you, what if the way you breathe is scripting your reality without your consent? What if your future is not waiting in your next affirmation, but in your next breath? And what if your breath has never been the problem? It's just been trying to survive the story you've been living. Keep listening. We're going to breathe into a new story together. You might not realize it, but your breath is telling a story your heart no longer believes in. It's the story of defense, of vigilance, of waiting for something to go wrong. And every shallow breath reinforces that script, a script where safety is uncertain, where change is dangerous, where the body must brace for impact, even when the threat is long gone. This is the breath of survival, the breath that says, don't grow, don't soften, don't move too far from the familiar. And when you breathe like this, the universe listens. Not to your words, but to your energy. When your breathing stays tight, high in the chest, hurried and incomplete, your nervous system interprets that pattern as danger. It doesn't matter what you're thinking. It doesn't matter how many times you visualize a new future. If your body is breathing like the past is still hunting you, your energy field becomes incoherent, disorganized, closed off. And an incoherent field cannot magnetize coherent experiences. Instead of attracting, it deflects. Instead of creating, it protects. There's a science behind this. When breath is short and rapid, cortisol rises. The brain enters alert mode. The heart loses rhythm. The body prepares to defend, not to dream. And in this defense mode, the flow of new possibilities slows to a trickle, because manifestation doesn't happen in a state of emergency. It requires openness, stillness, coherence. Your breath becomes either the door you walk through or the lock that keeps you where you are. So many people live their entire lives breathing as if the worst is always about to happen, and yet they wonder why they feel stuck, why peace feels fleeting, why the life they envision stays just out of reach. But it's not because they don't want it badly enough. It's because they're breathing from a place that cannot receive it. The breath reveals the truth long before the mind admits it. You're not broken. You're just out of rhythm with the reality you desire. This isn't about blaming your breath. It's about listening to it. It's about understanding that your breath has been protecting you for years. But maybe now, finally, it's time to let it guide you somewhere new, somewhere softer, somewhere that feels like freedom. Take a moment and imagine this. Every breath you take is not just air. It's information, it's signal, it's dialogue between your inner world and the quantum field that surrounds you. This field, invisible to the naked eye, is constantly responding, not just to what you say or think, but to the way you breathe. Because the breath isn't just a physiological process. It's an energetic code, a language of vibration, a transmission of frequency. When you inhale, you're not just pulling in oxygen. You're exchanging data with the universe. You're offering a tone, a signal, a pulse. And when you exhale, you are broadcasting your state. Your inner alignment, or misalignment, becomes a wave that travels outward, touching everything. This is where breath becomes far more than survival. It becomes creation. It becomes communication. It becomes coherence, or distortion. The mind speaks in electricity. The heart speaks in magnetism. And the breath, in its quiet rhythm, is the translator between the two. It carries the electrical thought from the brain and wraps it in the magnetic emotion of the heart. And it's this union, when heart and brain speak the same language through breath, that reality begins to shift. This is not mysticism. This is physics. This is how timelines bend. This is how possibilities solidify. Greg Braden has spoken of this, how the breath modulates the coherence of the heart, and how the heart in turn informs the world through resonance. When the heart is chaotic, the field is noisy. When the heart is coherent, the field becomes a mirror. And what it reflects is no longer a repetition of the past, but a transmission of presence. Breath is the tuner, the adjuster, the key that aligns the internal instrument with the frequencies that already exist in the field. And this is the mystery. You don't need to invent a new future. It already exists. The field holds infinite versions of you, but your breath is what decides which one you meet. Each inhale can reinforce the timeline you're in, or dissolve it. Each exhale can echo the patterns of yesterday, or it can clear them. You are never just breathing, you are always choosing, whether you know it or not. There's a quiet irony in the search for peace. So often we try to force it. We sit down, close our eyes, and begin to control the breath, as if peace is something we can engineer with precision. But control, even when disguised as discipline, often masks fear. Fear of doing it wrong, fear of not getting results, fear that the breath won't lead us where we want to go. So we grip tighter, we concentrate harder, and without realizing it, the very effort to control becomes the barrier to flow. You may have felt this before. That strange tension in the chest during a breathing practice, that subtle pressure to get it right, that quiet self-monitoring that whispers, this should be deeper, slower, better. But true transformation doesn't happen through performance. It happens through permission. The nervous system doesn't respond to effort. It responds to trust. It opens in surrender, not in strategy. What we call control is often a symptom of the ego trying to take the lead in a process meant for the soul. And the breath, more than anything, is a sacred expression of soul. It doesn't want to be mastered. It wants to be met. It doesn't need choreography. It needs presence. When you force the breath, you separate from it. You become the observer, not the experiencer. You exit the body in search of control, rather than inhabiting it with compassion. Misunderstood spirituality has turned breathing into another item on a to-do list, another performance of progress, another ritual of anxiety disguised as growth. But the truth is more tender. Real transformation begins the moment you stop trying to change yourself and begin listening to what's already changing you. The breath is already wise, already attuned, already aware of what your conscious mind cannot see. And when you let go, not of awareness, but of effort, something begins to shift. The breath, when left to its natural intelligence, will find its own rhythm of restoration, its own dance of release. It knows the way back to coherence. You don't need to force it there. You need only stop interrupting the path. There is a moment in the early morning, before the world reclaims your attention, when your body is most open to new patterns. It's in this quiet space, between sleep and thought, between yesterday and today, that the breath becomes a tuning fork, a bridge, a reprogramming tool. not through effort, but through rhythm, through repetition, through the language your nervous system understands best: safety. Science tells us that breathing at 6 breaths per minute initiates a profound shift in the autonomic nervous system. It activates the parasympathetic branch, the one responsible for healing, digestion, restoration. At this pace, your brain begins to slow. Theta waves emerge, associated with intuition, emotional integration, and deep calm. This is not a mystical experience. It's a biological one, and yet it touches the spiritual in its simplicity. Each morning, before the demands of the day anchor you in old scripts, you can begin with a simple sequence: a gentle inhale for 5 seconds, a soft exhale for 5. Not forcing, not counting, just inviting the body to remember its original pace. This rhythm aligns your heart's electrical signals with the brain's patterns. It opens coherence. And in that coherence, a new field begins to emerge. Subtle, but unmistakable. It's the feeling of already having it. Not in fantasy, but in frequency. This breath is not just preparation. It's participation. It's an energetic vote for the reality you wish to inhabit. Before decisions, before conversations, before visualizations, you anchor this rhythm. You return to it like a home, and slowly, the nervous system begins to trust again. It releases the armor. It updates its signals. It allows possibility to be felt, not just imagined. Linking a specific breath rhythm to a chosen emotion, like gratitude or fulfillment or quiet joy, creates a memory in the body, a pairing. So when you return to that breath later in the day, even amidst chaos, your body remembers, your field remembers. And manifestation, in this context, is no longer a distant goal. It becomes a reflection, not of your willpower, but of your alignment. There's a sound to fear, a texture, a rhythm. It's the tight, shallow breath that moves just beneath the collarbones. It's the subtle inhale that never quite fills, the exhale that rushes out too quickly. It's the breath of someone trying not to disturb the water, like a frightened lake, still, tense, almost frozen. But breath was never meant to stay small. It was meant to move like the ocean, expansive, rhythmic, alive. Shallow breathing is like ripples on a surface trying to stay still, afraid to make a wave. But deep breathing is the pulse of the sea. It rises with power, falls with grace. It doesn't rush. It doesn't force. It responds to the moon, to the earth, to the invisible pull of something greater. And in that rhythm, it teaches you something forgotten. You are not here to remain contained. Most people breathe as if they are apologizing for existing. They inhale scarcity. They exhale resistance. They try not to take up too much space. They try not to feel too much. But the breath you take is not a disruption. It's an invitation to return, to expand, to feel again. Fear teaches you to shrink, to protect. But breath, when remembered, teaches you how to belong again, to your own body, your own energy, your own unfolding. So ask yourself, without judgment, what does your breath sound like today? Not in theory, in this moment. Is it the cautious whisper of a frightened pond, or the deep, trusting rhythm of a wave that knows it cannot be broken? The ocean does not apologize for its tide, and neither should you. You were not made to breathe in fear. You were made to breathe in freedom, not someday, now. There's a kind of silence that never arrives, not because the world is too loud, but because the mind won't stop spinning. You sit in stillness, but your thoughts keep reaching, planning, replaying, scanning the future for danger, rewinding the past for meaning. And somewhere in that loop, the breath gets hijacked. You stop feeling, you start calculating. The body, once you're home, becomes a background noise. Ignored, bypassed, forgotten. We live in an age of dopamine abundance. Endless scrolls, instant answers, flashes of novelty at every corner. And while your mind is entertained, your body slowly disconnects. The reward circuits in your brain override the subtle signals of presence. Your breath becomes shallow again, fragmented, unfelt. And in that disconnection, you lose something essential. Not just awareness, but alignment. Because the breath is not just a bodily function. It's your antenna to intuition, your channel to the field. Overthinking is not clarity, it's clutter. It tricks you into believing that more thought equals more truth. But truth lives in sensation, in rhythm, in coherence. And that can only be accessed when the breath is steady enough to let the noise settle. When breath slows, dopamine settles. When breath deepens, awareness returns. Not the kind of awareness that analyzes, but the kind that feels, the kind that knows. Stillness is not the absence of movement, it's the return of rhythm. It's when the breath starts to speak louder than the noise. When your inhale carries the weight of presence, and your exhale becomes a release, not just of air, but of tension, illusion, and urgency. Breath detoxes more than the body. It detoxes attention. It calls you back to where creation actually begins. Not in mental loops, but in embodied silence. To feel your future, you must first feel yourself. Not the performance, not the persona, but the pulse underneath it all. And that pulse is always waiting in the breath. She came to me exhausted, not in the way you sleep off, but in the way that accumulates in silence. An architect with decades of experience, decades of deadlines, and decades of suppressing what she truly felt. Her voice had become a tool for clients, her body a vehicle for efficiency. But inside, something was breaking. She had the career, the credentials, the outward success, but the joy, the inspiration, long gone, and her breath, tight, high, barely there, reflected that absence. At first, she didn't believe in breath as a pathway to change. It felt too simple, too slow, too unfamiliar. But she agreed to one thing. Before every presentation, every proposal, every meeting, she would pause. Just for 2 minutes. She would place a hand on her heart, close her eyes, inhale slowly for 5 seconds, exhale gently for 5. Nothing fancy, just rhythm, just presence, just permission to be fully there. And slowly, something unexpected happened. Clients began to respond differently. Ideas she had struggled with for months began to flow again. Conversations became easier. Her confidence didn't come from trying harder. It came from finally feeling aligned. Her nervous system, once wired for anxiety, began to settle. And with it came clarity, creativity, calm. Within 90 days, she received offers from firms she had once admired from a distance. But more importantly, she began to admire herself again. It wasn't magic. It was biology in service of intention. It was energy realigned through coherence. It was breath as a form of remembering who she was before she learned to hold it all in. The transformation didn't start in her resume. It started in her ribcage. In the quiet trust that maybe, just maybe, her breath had been waiting to lead her all along. There's something extraordinary about breath, something we often forget in the rush to fix, to heal, to become. It's not just a tool. It's not just a practice. It's the messenger, the vehicle, the rhythm through which belief becomes biology. Bruce Lipton reminds us that our cells do not respond to the world directly. They respond to our perception of it. And what shapes that perception more intimately than breath? When the breath is shallow, the signal is fear. When it is deep, the signal is trust. One constricts, one expands, one contracts the field, one opens it. So the breath is not just reflecting your state, it is reinforcing it. With every inhale, you're sending a message. This is what I believe. This is what I expect. This is who I think I am. With every exhale, that message travels to your heart, your cells, your field. If belief creates biology, then breath delivers the instruction. It imprints your inner truth onto the body, and the body speaks it back into the world. Neville Goddard said, "You must feel it to create it." Oh, but how do you feel what you've never allowed yourself to fully breathe in? Emotion without breath remains a concept, but emotion with breath becomes experience, embodied, alive, magnetic. So maybe it's not about changing everything at once. Maybe it begins with changing the way you breathe into what's already here, into this moment, into your own aliveness, into the possibility that you are not waiting for transformation. You are remembering it with each breath. And now, a final invitation. Don't breathe just to survive. Don't breathe just to function. Breathe to become. Breathe like someone who already lives the life they've imagined. Breathe like someone whose field is listening, because it is. It always was.